Rick Ector from Rick's Firearm Academy of Detroit is with us on the program. Rick, how you doing, sir?
I am doing great, Cam. Weather is a little on the warm side, but based on how things have been here historically, I'll take it and enjoy it for as long as I can.
Well, because you know that, as they say on Game of Thrones, winter is coming. In Detroit, it lasts, about 8.5 months or so?
Yeah, Kyle was telling me it's pretty warm down there in Virginia right now, so I hear you guys are smoldering as well.
And we absolutely are. Now, so listen, at Fox News, there's a story, gun control groups accused of, quote-unquote, swatting open carriers, putting lives at risk. Swatting, is the and there are a couple of, I guess, iterations of this. There's the version where somebody spoofs your cell phone, calls 911 to report a crime, and then the SWAT team shows up at your house. The several gun control groups, I guess, or at least one gun control group, Rick, encouraging their supporters, the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, encouraging their supporters to call 911 if they see somebody who is legally and lawfully openly carrying. Call 911, say that there's a person with a gun and it's freaking you out and they're acting weird, and the cops need to get there right away.
Yeah, it seems to be a very despicable practice. I think it's just a symptom that these guys are desperate at any attempt to coerce or try to persuade us not to exercise our Second Amendment rights. From what I understand, these guys are often over-exaggerating and giving misleading claims over the phones when they're talking to emergency 911 personnel. And one thing that I would like to see come out of this as a consequence is that for law enforcement to vigorously investigate the persons who are making these calls and look at charging them with making false calls if it is definitely warranted. Also, too, what I would also like to see law enforcement agencies also not only make sure that their officers are aware in respective jurisdictions where open carry is legal, but to also ask supporting questions as to the behavior of the reported person. Is this person, just walking down the street, or is he just reaching for a box of Fruit Loops at the grocery store aisle? Try to get more information and to act accordingly. But, it sounds like these anti-gun people are truly desperate and are grasping at straws and are crossing the line.
There's a quote, Ladd Everett, Director of Communications for the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, said in a statement to Fox News, quote, in an era in which individuals are being allowed to carry loaded guns on our streets with no permit, background check, or required training, it is common sense for concerned citizens to call 911 when they see an armed individual whose intentions are unclear. These open carry laws guarantee that we, he says, in law enforcement, will have no idea by the criminal and or mental health background of these individuals until they actually commit a crime. And by then, he says, it could be far too late. We have a full confidence in our men and women in blue to assess these situations. Again, as long as they're getting good information, right, to assess that information, then perhaps they can adequately assess that situation. But again, if you are getting a call, there's a person and he's acting strangely and really oddly, and he's carrying a gun in a holster, and you say, okay, well, what are they doing that's odd? Maybe you say he's fondling the gun. Maybe he's not, right? Right. I mean, what these gun control advocates are doing is encouraging people to call 911 and say, I feel uncomfortable about this man with a gun. So that police will come out and they will talk to that person. And maybe that person will decide, if this happens to them 2, 3, 4, 5 times, maybe they'll decide not to openly carry a firearm. That seems to be the general intent behind this idea. Would you agree?
Well, as I said before, it's just a sign of desperation, and they're willing to cross whatever arbitrary lines of acceptable behavior to discourage law-abiding citizens from simply exercising their right. If it's talking about people having the right to speak and the right to assemble in public, certainly we wouldn't want to engage in any behavior to restrict folks from engaging in that sort of activity. I think in a likewise fashion, we shouldn't be doing it with regards to carrying a firearm. It's perfectly legal as long as someone is not doing anything that could be construed as unlawful or uncivilized, that really should not be an issue. But, think about these guys, man, that nothing is off limits, and they'll do anything to restrict or impair our right to carry a firearms. And really, I don't think that we should be surprised, but I really think that the appropriate response from law enforcement is to do an appropriate background investigation into these calls and to make sure that public resources aren't being tied up because they could probably use the police force in some other areas that would be more effective for the safety of the community.
Well, that, Rick, I'm glad that you brought that up because that is, I think, maybe one of the most important points here is that, look, we don't live in a world in which we have an infinite number of police officers, at the beck and call, just waiting to respond to every crime that occurs out there. Departments big and small are dealing with reduced budgets. They are dealing with reduced forces. We've talked with sheriffs in Oregon who say that they don't even have 24-hour coverage for their deputies on the streets. I mean, there's a 4-hour period in the dead of night, hopefully when things are quiet, when there are no deputies that are out on patrol because they can only afford to do this 20 hours a day. And if there's a call, then a deputy has to get up and go out, and it's going to take longer for them to respond. Big city departments are dealing with these same manpower shortage. You hear this in Dallas. You hear this in Baltimore. When you make a call, hoping that the police will send some sort of message to somebody who's exercising a right in a way that you disagree with, if they just, get bothered by the police long enough, you are taking those officers away from what could be a truly important call. You are delaying their response. You are wasting their time. And at that point, you maybe think that you're acting in the public good. You're actually, I think, acting to the public's detriment.
Yeah, it's a very serious issue, and if heaven forbid some police are needed in an area because they have an actual situation that mandates their presence, and they're out chasing, on a wild goose chase because of some anti-gun advocates game that they're playing, there could be some very dire consequences there, and that's why I strongly believe that when these calls come in, there's a level of scrutiny that's given to what the reported person is doing. And if it's deemed to be frivolous and potentially harmful to the community, I hope that these individuals making these prank calls are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Rick Ector from Rick's Firearm Academy of Detroit. Listen, before we let you go, let me ask, how's business? You getting a lot of first-time customers, those getting their concealed carry courses?
Yeah, definitely. Interest is still there. Major recap on our police chief's job the last 2.5 years he's been here in the city. He's still acknowledging that concealed carriers are having a positive impact on crime, not to take anything away from the hard work that his officers are doing on the job every day. We still have our issues. There are some concerns here in the city. Just when you think things are at a certain level, you turn on the newscast and you see something just totally ridiculous and heinous, not to drag this thing out, man, but a guy was literally shot yesterday for a bag of potato chips. I mean, things really couldn't get more ridiculous at times here, but people are responding. They're calling. We're still seeing people, particularly women and seniors. One great thing I had an opportunity to experience was couple of parents, they brought in their 13-year-old. They said, hey, we want to make sure that our child knows fundamental firearm safety, know what a gun is for. And it was really a joy to train a young person with respect to firearm safety and to ensure that, he knows to respect the firearm with the proper awe that it deserves. But it's a great thing that I'm doing, and it gives me a lot of joy to empower our fellow citizens here in Detroit, Michigan.
That is awesome. Rick, listen, keep up what you're doing, sir. It's always a pleasure talking with you, and hopefully things will cool down there in Detroit in more ways than one here before long.
Yeah, definitely. I'm ready for the fall, man. I'm ready for the fall.
I bet. All right, Rick. Thanks so much, man. Rick Ector joining us from Rick's Firearm Academy of Detroit.